AA is a cult. Hear me out. Before I begin this video, I do have a sponsor of the day. Just kidding, I don't have a sponsor unfortunately yet. But I just wanted to explain what AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, actually is. Because I realize that not everybody has been there, not everyone knows what it is. So Alcoholics Anonymous is a 12-step recovery program based on religion and God, and I think it was founded by Christians, 2 Christian men, I believe. The 12 steps represent being in deep honesty with yourself and taking inventory for your character flaws and admitting your shortcomings of when you were using. Being in service is a part of the program, so helping in the community. And also you have a sponsor, which is the person that helps guide you through the steps and the person that you check in with every day to hold you accountable, essentially. They recommend that you go to meetings multiple times a week or even every day at the beginning. The meetings essentially consist of a main speaker, and then it just opens the floor for everybody to discuss. And typically the shares are usually just venting. There is no specific topic usually about what you're going to discuss, so usually it is just venting. And so I am not against sharing emotions. I'm not against people experiencing and venting about specific aspects of their life. However, I think when you have 20, 30, 15, 5 years of sobriety, or even any length amount of time past like a month or 2 or a year or whatever, it's kind of self-defeating to continuously bring up your downfall in life. It's a bit self-defeating to just constantly be reminding yourself and others about that specific era of your life. And it's almost like you're reliving it and you're admitting it to other people, and like you can't let go of like that part of yourself because clearly you haven't forgiven that part of yourself on some level. Otherwise it wouldn't still be so prevalent in your recovery journey. A lot of what I'm talking about in this video actually isn't derived from the 12 steps and the big book itself. It is specifically about the ideologies that the community has taken. And so of course I can't speak for every single AA out there in the world ever because I haven't been to every place. But I did, spend 10 years, hundreds of meetings at different locations. So I do have a sense of understanding of how the meetings go and the mentalities that walk in to those rooms, what they're like. What I'm discussing in this video are the 3 ideologies that I think are woven into this collective consciousness of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is fear mongering, by saying that if you leave the program, you're going to relapse and die. Number 2 is victim consciousness, where you are still reliving the past so deeply that you're like talking about it on a consistent basis as if it's still your current present reality, which it's not. So it's like you're not alchemizing that pain into gold and like power. Number 3 is shame consciousness as well, just the shame of looking down on people so heavily who do drink or relapse, or truly separating yourself from society by calling them the normies, and you're the one that's like sick and diseased and needs help. So like essentially shaming yourself by entering a room by admitting that you're sick and there's something wrong with you and you have a disease, which is just really something intense to speak about yourself. Another thing that I would say that our society as a whole is not necessarily ready to speak about is just that I don't really think that drugs and alcohol made you do those certain things. I think that that is truly a deep character flaw that stems from trauma or your own internal suffering. I think that it's almost a scapegoat of choosing to assume that it was purely the drugs and alcohol that made you act or say certain things. I don't really resonate with that concept. I think that it's really more placed on the person and their ability to have stronger morality and a sense of being, and to heal their own traumas in order to not act out in those ways. And I say this because I was somebody that still did just as worse things in my sobriety as like me in my using days or whatever. So yeah, I think that as a society, we have to take a bit more power into our hands and not necessarily place our power on external factors, such as I am a diseased addict. I think that that isn't necessarily true for every single person that walks in to those rooms. I think that that's just a really extreme case, and I just am offering my story as like example of empowerment in the ways I was able to empower myself without using a 12-step program or really even like therapists or anything like that. Like I was able to maintain sobriety and like authenticity and like connection to God in my own way, in my own story, by admitting that I am powerful, that I do have the power to change my life, and it doesn't have to necessarily be the way that those people were telling me to do it. Hello loves, thank you for joining me today. This is going to be a probably long video. So, AA is a cult. Hear me out. Let me read you the definition of what a cult is. So, a cult is a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing, and this thing being your addictions. So this video is going to be about my journey, a very long one, about AA and the problematic culture that is surrounded with it. And essentially, long story short, if you don't want to watch the whole video, I was in AA for over 10 years, in and out, weaving myself in this like cult. And it never truly helped me. It never got me to stay sober, and never put me around the right people, and never set me on the right path in order to truly heal myself and be sober. And 10 years is a long time of my life. It was from age 15 to about age like 23, 24. So it's not quite 10 years, but even I think after I stopped going, I had these ideologies, mental programmings, immersed into my being and my way of life. You know, like I still carried these belief systems with me even after I may have stopped going specifically in those rooms. So now I am coming up on my 3 years of sobriety. No alcohol, no weed, no substances. I have smoked cigarettes here and there, but I really quit them. Like it's very rare for me to do so. The only thing that I consume now on a consistent basis is coffee, and that is definitely something I wish to abstain from one day as well. So I have truly healed my body. I don't believe that I'm an addict. I have healed so many layers of trauma that have occurred in my life. Like I really had a lifetime of trauma. I say that with a smile on my face. It's like one thing I haven't worked through is like when I talk about my trauma, or when I talk about the negative things in my life, I do end up smiling and I do end up laughing. So there is some like layer of like discomfort when I do bring up the things that I've been through. And that's a story for another time. I'm not really going to get in the steps of what took me into AA. I will just explain my journey in AA. And this video can truly be so long. This is something I have thought about making for so many years. And it's just something I realized quite a long time ago. I want to say like 4 years ago is when I started like understanding the layers. It was probably longer than that, to be honest, but 4 or 5 years ago is when I started understanding the layers of like, okay, there is something wrong here. There's something that like doesn't sit right, and it's like clearly keeping me in a loop and keeping me stuck. So this isn't to bash anybody who is in AA. If you really follow those belief systems and you thrive from those specific belief systems, then like beautiful. I'm so glad you found something that like keeps you sober and keeps you safe and like in good spirits. That's amazing. However, this is just like my personal journey and what I truly believe, and why I was never able to successfully be sober while I'm in this like community of people who want to achieve like abstinence from substances and sobriety and so forth. So now that I've said all of that out of the way, this video probably can be so long. I've literally spoken to myself, like created voice notes, created multiple videos, just talking to myself about this, like really diving into like how and what ways I was stuck in this cult-like energy. And so, where do I begin? Well, I will begin when I first was introduced to AA. Was when I was much younger, like 14 or 15, even before I was in AA. This friend's sister would bring us to like the holiday parties, and we just like dipped our toes into like being introduced in that community for one reason or another. And so in my world, I learned what an addict was before I learned what normal drinking was. So that implantment alone of like, I didn't know that like people could drink or party even like normally. Like I just saw addicts. I just saw alcoholics or whatever they want to identify themselves as. So this whole journey is a journey of learning that I am not an addict, and I am truly an empowered, sovereign being, and I have made choices in my life to create a reality where I am not ruled by the ideology of powerlessness. I don't resonate and I don't abide by the ideas that I am powerless. So this is like the whole encapsulation of my journey that is said in one sentence, basically. And beyond my childhood trauma, I was truly just someone who was addicted to danger. Even before I started drinking and partying and doing all of these other things, I was putting myself in highly dangerous situations, even before I ever took a sip of alcohol. So clearly it was something woven into my coding from like the trauma I experienced that really inhibited my understanding of what danger was, of what is good, what is wrong, what is safe, what is unsafe. I didn't have this understanding because of the certain childhood experiences that I had and like preteen and so forth. So because of this, after I started whatever, I don't even like to call it using, personally, I have never thoroughly been chemically dependent on any hard substance, like really hard substance. I can't say I've never been chemically dependent, but I've definitely never been like bodily level dependent on alcohol or anything like this. So around age 15, I started going to meetings because I assumed that that's where I was supposed to go if I felt like I was drinking too much, which like I really think that every teenager drinks too much in America, especially California. Like it's just honestly part of our culture. So there's that aspect of it that like on some level what I was doing was just a reflection of like what everybody else our age was doing. Maybe I was doing it a bit more intensified and I would put myself in a bit more dangerous situations, but that was definitely because of the trauma. So I didn't know this at the time. I just was like, oh my gosh, like I am doing this so much, like I must have a problem. And so I started going to these meetings by age 15. And this is like so weird that I was so welcomed, and I like put myself in these rooms with like all these older men, which is like so weird because AA is mainly filled with older men. And that in itself is so inappropriate if you think about it, because like how many times is like a 40-year-old going to be sitting in lengthy periods of times with a 15-year-old girl? Like they're not really going to cross paths in life, but like in this scenario they were able to. They had access to even like speaking to me or like introducing themselves to me or trying to be like friendly, and none of it was friendly. It was definitely all predatory, like 80 to 90% of the time. I heard things for the first time in my life in these rooms where men are trying to become better, right? Oh, like just can't wait until you turn 18, like just waiting until you turn 18, or like just weird things that like a 15-year-old should just never hear. Like I should have never been exposed to that. Like, so that's number one. And then I essentially got kicked out of my home and I didn't have anywhere to go. And I was taken in by this couple who were, let me make sure it's recording where it gets really weird. So I was taken in by this couple who, she was my sponsor, who some man directed me to her basically. And granted, this does not make me, I'm not saying I'm ungrateful for the fact that they let me in their house. Mind you, I was still contributing. It wasn't like they just took me off the street and like I wasn't contributing back. I had jobs. I was in like charter school. Like I was working multiple jobs, and I was like contributing a bit, not so much because I'm not like even an adult yet, but I was contributing. And so the rule was that if I ever touched a substance, I would not be welcome there. And okay, great. Like I had no intentions of, like doing anything. I was clearly like committed to having some stability. I had jobs, I was going to school. Like I was basically like a functioning adult, like by 15. And so then this other ideology comes in, right? Of you are powerless to substances. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to touch on later why this is a problematic mentality. Another ideology that was really grilled into my brain, specifically by this woman, but like everybody in this morphogenetic field of thinking also believe this 100%. They would say that your addiction is doing push-ups. Your addiction is getting stronger the longer you stay sober. So while you're doing supposedly this work to better yourself and up-level yourself and heal yourself of your wounding, of your traumas and your patterns, apparently these people would literally repeat to you and to yourself well, your addiction is just getting stronger the longer you stay sober. So if you ever go out, you're going to be like shooting up H within like a week. That's literally things that I would hear as a 15-year-old girl. First of all, I've never even done that stuff yet, or like at all, really. So I had never even done like really hard drugs at this point. I was just a girl that like smoked and drank and like did, you know, a lot of questionable party things, but like all in all, it wasn't anything that was super hard. Maybe the amount I was doing would be considered hard, but like it was still never like, oh, I was like smoking crack, you know, like on the streets or something. I wasn't there. I was just a girl who partied. And so this is also where it gets really weird. This is my mentor. Like, she was my mentor. She was 26 years old and I was 15. So there is a 9-year age gap. Her husband was in his mid to late 30s. I think they also had like a 10-year age gap. And so this is where it gets really, really weird, where I remember this conversation so vividly. And I thought I was so cool in the moment to be talking to an adult this way, because like 26, you're an adult, your frontal lobe is formed. And I really hope that woman like sees this video one day, and like, I just hope it finds her, because like none of what this couple was like portraying to me was like normal on any level. I remember when I turned 26, I thought about it. I remember, because I was like, oh, I'm the age she was when she told me these things. And I think about it. When I remember when I was 26, I was like, would I ever speak to a 15-year-old this way? No, that would be so weird. I remember actually I was 26 talking to a 15-year-old girl. And I asked her if she would like sneak out and hang out with boys. And that felt like I was prying. Like that felt like too much. And so the fact that this woman described to me in sheer detail the S parties she would have, the lesbian that she would have. She went into sheer detail to me, and I thought I was so cool for hearing this, and it really stuck into my mind. Like, she did, you know, offer me some good guidance on other things. Like, I learned, like, that was when I kind of decided that like nature was my higher power, and like it was in the, like, it was before I knew anything about spirituality, but I took it that like it's in the wind and the land, and like this is how I like learned how to attune to spirit more, and that is beautiful. That's great. However, like the conversations with this woman were oftentimes pretty inappropriate for how old I was. But again, because of my traumas and because of my lack of understanding of like what's, like, I was often like very highly sexualized. And so it just didn't resonate that that wasn't appropriate. Taking it to another level, her and her husband would tell me about the S parties that they would throw, or that like the conventions for AA would have. And like, why are they telling that to like a minor? It was so weird. And so I was living there. I was working multiple jobs. She would buy me packs of cigarettes. I would smoke a pack of cigarette a day, 2 rock stars, a few caffeine pills, and I, shit you not, I would take 16 shots of espresso. But because I was sober, this was congratulated. So I always think it's really interesting that like at home, I was looked down on for the issues that I was experiencing. But in this cult and in this like home, I was celebrated for it. I was like, oh, like, You're doing so good. So I always think that's interesting that like in order to join this cult, you have to admit that you're powerless. Isn't that like what every like cult leader essentially grooms you into believing, that you are powerless? They're the ones with the power. So like you're nothing and like you have no sense of like sovereignty, and then like your substances have all the power over you. So this takes me to this very scientific fact called the morphogenetic field. So what is a morphogenetic field? Let me look it up and read the proper definition. Okay, well, honestly, these are all really scientific explanations, so I'm just gonna explain my understanding of it. Is a morphogenetic field is when you frequent a certain energy field with humans, right? So like, but this is a scientific fact. When you are constantly around this frequency of energy, your internal brain essentially synapses, and you're feeding each other information even without speaking. So without even speaking, if you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people that are claiming that they're powerless, so then you're digesting that energy, you're emitting that energy, you're emitting that frequency. And mind you, in AA, they say, like, especially at the beginning, I don't really know for how long, but they recommend you go to these meetings every day. And essentially, if you don't go to them every day, and if you don't call your sponsor every day, you're essentially looked at as like oh, you're going to go relapse. So the morphogenetic field of constantly hearing that people are powerless, that you're powerless. So now this becomes your core belief. This becomes your mantra. This becomes your affirmation for yourself, that you are a powerless being to substances. You have no power. I am powerless. I am powerless. I am an addict. I am an addict. Hi, I'm Roya and I am an addict. That is a crazy thing to repeat to yourself, to your cells, to your energy field, to your frequency every single day, or like quite often throughout the week. And to be in a morphogenetic field, a group of people that are also repeating this affirmation to themselves, what is that going to do to your subconscious of, oh, when I'm sober, I'm not healing myself, my addiction's actually just getting stronger? That's wild to believe that. So because now you've entered this belief system into your mind and your body and your spirit. So this is your truth. So when you do go drink one beer, you are gonna go shoot up or do whatever crazy thing you told yourself you were gonna do, because that's what you wrote out for yourself. So instead of, oh, the longer I sustain sobriety, the more my cellular coding, my DNA is actually reverberating higher into a higher frequency. I choose the higher timeline. I choose, like, that's my, like, if that's what you're telling yourself, then great, beautiful. Like, and again, maybe this is because I was never physically dependent on super hard drugs or alcohol, but like, there is now, everyone says that it is a disease, right? So it's like hereditary, that like if your mom is a drinker, then you have so much more susceptibility to having that addiction pattern in your brain. And okay, this is true, but it's also true that like you can up level your DNA, you can heal your DNA, you can really recode your subconscious. Like that is fact, that is truth as well. So like you can fall into what your family has created through ancestral lines, but it's also so fact that you can heal those ancestral lines and you don't have to like repeat them. So again, it's really interesting to sit in a room with men who would rather say they have a disease and that they're powerless over than admitting their own character flaws. Like, and that is really harsh for a lot of people to hear. This is really crippling because they've already essentially claimed their victimization to substances. And I'm not saying that there's no such thing as an addict. I'm not saying that addiction is not real. I'm saying that the level of people who have convinced themselves to even wonder if they are capable of healing is like astonishing. Like, why have I known more people in that program that have passed away than people not in that program? Why have I known like really high up people that created events that were so high up in the community? Why did they pass away and like not people that just got out of the community? Like, if they work the system, if they work these steps, if they were in the community, okay, so like it's questionable. It's questionable. So when I was 15 years old, I'm repeating this, I'm casting this, I'm weaving this into my mind, and I'm convinced, I have affirmed that when I go smoke, I'm gonna like go start drinking handles of alcohol again. So that's essentially what happened with this couple. Is like, they were already doing really weird things. It ended super weird with them. They got into a lot of fights about me, like saying I was ruining their marriage. I don't know how. And like, I think the end all be all of it was they went through my room and they found these like blank CDs that I had stashed away from their collection, and because I wanted to make like playlists, I think. And anyways, that was like, they figured out it was that I came to them with honesty. Actually, I came to them with honesty that I had smoked, and immediately all my stuff was in a trash bag in the front yard. And so I think because of the stress of not knowing where to go, not having a support system, and also having the ideology that, well, I smoked, so I must be going back out. My addiction got stronger, right? So like, let me go turn it up and go get crazy. And I'm sure that's what happened. Again, it was basically 10 years of this. That is just insanity in itself. Like, clearly something wasn't working. I was following this. I was going to like, I have been to hundreds of meetings. Sometimes I would go to like 2 meetings a day. And then there was a point where I started leaving in the middle of meetings because I felt this like really dark, kind of pathetic energy coming from people. And I know it sounds so harsh to say that, but it was like this sulking energy of like, woe is me, I have no power, I did this, my life is shit, like my life sucks, like, and I just couldn't like handle being around like that many men who were just like so, I don't know, just like so defeated, like just so defeated. Like, life is beautiful, like we're living the best. I remember I used to journal in the meetings. I always journaled. I'm just like, I've always been a journaler. That sounds funny. I've always been a journaler. Which actually one time a woman got mad at me for journaling, and I was just like writing down quotes from like what I felt was inspiring. Like, I needed to like sit through basically the BS like of their like lulling, their sadness. I like had to sit through it, and then I would try to extract the wisdom. I just wanted to sift through and find the wisdom of like, why am I here? And this woman called me out and actually got upset with me. She was like, you're not keeping us anonymous. And I'm like, I'm just a girl with a journal. I'm not like a news reporter. Like, what the hell? I'm not like voice recording you, which anyone in those rooms could be secretly recording people. But anyways, there is one quote that I remember, and it was the only good one out of the fucking 10 years that I was there. It was the only good quote that I don't want the light at the end of the tunnel. I want the kaleidoscopic sky, which came from this like old biker man, and it was just like something so unexpected, but I was like, oh my god, I love that. Like, I don't want the glimmer of hope, I want the whole package, baby, all the facets of beauty of life. And that's what I got, and I was like, oh my god, I resonate with this. Like, yes, this is the only one quote in 10 years that I received that was valuable. So where was the breaking point for me? Where did I start realizing that like this is like not, like I just don't resonate with these people? Where did the seed start implanting in my mind that I realized there's something so much deeper than this like addiction pattern? There's something so much more. Like, the addiction is honestly here. The energy work and the trauma and the like healing is like so beyond this, okay? It's like you're focusing on like a symptom, and like there's so much beyond this. And mind you, I was already deep into like many different therapists, many like support systems, emotional supports. Like, I was in so many different programs of like trying to get better. Like, it wasn't only AA. It was when I had a different mentor, essentially. And she was a little hippie girl, and she was so smiley and cheery and just like a super lighthearted energy. I actually ended up like firing her or parting ways with her because I was so deep into the brainwash of like, she's not following the exact structure of what you're supposed to do to stay sober, so she's gonna end up relapsing. Like, that's like my weird mentality. Like, you're supposed to call your sponsor every day, you're supposed to go to like many meetings a week, and she just didn't do any of that. She just was like super relaxed, super chill in her life, like, you know, didn't have this like really dark hovering energy within her. So I remember our last conversation, sitting in her car, telling her a bit of my story of my past, and like telling her about my, you know, numerous diagnoses that I was given. And she was the first person to explain to me that these diagnoses, one, don't define who I am. It's not who I am. They're just symptoms of certain experiences of things that have happened. But not only that, it's also that I am just such a sensitive, intuitive being that I can also channel and pick up on the energies and frequencies of the collective consciousness. Mind you, I was like, I want to say 19 years old at this point. Maybe, yeah, like maybe 20, I don't know. But 19 or 20, and this was like really substantial information. Mind you, I had never I was a spiritual being always in my life. Like, I always journaled, I always had this conversation with like the divine. I didn't know what any of it meant. Like, I honestly had no idea. But this was like the seed being planted of like, other indigenous cultures don't see like mental illness as like something wrong with you. It just kind of like shows you that you have these like powers and that you're really sensitive in ways that other beings are not. And this like really like it struck me very deeply, and I will remember that conversation forever. Like, it was like the kind of like the one of the seeds planting of like the deeper awakening and expansion journey later on. And so this is probably also why I refused to like take medicine my whole life. Like, I was forced to take it at certain points, but I just knew deep down, like, I don't want to be I mean, no offense to people who do take medicine, I just believed truly in healing my soul and spirit beyond that. That's it. Like, it's against my beliefs. Like, even though I was taking substances, like at the time, I wouldn't even take like an ibuprofen. Like, I was like, no, I'm gonna heal naturally. And mind you, my symptoms and my madness in itself was really like, it was really like not easy. You know, it was very uneasy to go through what I have been through, which I'm not going to mention so much in this video, but just, it was a lot. There was a lot that I had to work through, and I just didn't want to be like, I didn't want my essence to be altered. That's pretty much it. That's why I didn't want to take medication. I saw what it had done to other people and certain people, and I was like, I can see how it like mutes you in some ways or another. Like, it mutes your essence, it mutes your energy levels and so forth, and also your libido, not to mention. I did not want that taken away from me either. Not another woman. And at this time, I had gone through, again, a cycle of really dark things. And so my PTSD, my anxiety levels were insane, just like waking up, full body shaking, like not being able to control what I was experiencing. And I remember wanting to look into CBD, and it was so outcasted, so like sad that version of me that could have really benefited from like CBD and like literally had like convulsions and body shakes because I was so like traumatized, and like the trauma was like living in my body, that I wouldn't even allow myself the medicine of CBD, which is an amazing like treatment. And it's like as if taking CBD was gonna make me like go smoke crack or something. Like, that's just kind of what I was told. So like I just didn't take it, and I continued to suffer and struggle and probably cause myself and others a lot more harm from my instability. And again, it's not like that was still my choice to like view it as a negative thing, but you're so deep into the brainwash at that point that, okay, this was again one of the breaking points of like something that, you know, aligns with my spirit, is when her and I were driving, and she saw this homeless man on the street, laying in the street, and she was like, see, the only difference between me and him is that I don't have a bottle in my hand, and once I do, we're just one and the same. And I was like, what? Like, that is so extreme. Like, that is just like really, really, really extreme thinking. Like, I just didn't resonate with it. And maybe that is some people's truth. They think that like once they drink, they will end up homeless. Major thing that was so detrimental, like a super detrimental ideology, is that if you relapse, you have nothing. If you relapse, you start from zero. And this is like really negative, because I remember I had a therapist that was like, that's a weird way of thinking. And I was like, why? It's just true. If you relapse, you're gonna like go become worse. You're gonna go end up on the street or something. Like, I was like, you know, obviously brainwashed. And she was like, no, because you still did that work. You still like put in the work of abstaining from substances for a year, 3 months, or even 2 weeks. Like, you still did the work. And I was like, no, but it erases. And she was like, no, I don't think that's not how it works. Like, you still put in that strength and willpower within yourself to stop. So it actually doesn't erase. And I just like the catastrophe that would occur when you relapse was just like the end all be all of everything. And I was shown that even by like my bags literally being thrown onto the street when I was so young, of like, this is the worst thing that I smoked weed again. Like, I am gonna be like on the street, like smoking crack or something by the time. I'm not making fun of people who are addicts, by the way. I know it's a serious thing. But it's just like, I had this ideology. It's like, if I relapse, this is the worst thing that's ever gonna happen to me, rather than being a little bit more grounded and understanding that like sometimes we go out of our we go out of our path and our destination, and when we have trust and strength in ourselves and in God, and like when we understand that we're sovereign beings. 21st birthday at 7 a.m, I was in an adult mental facility running an AA meeting. Most people on their 21st birthdays are gonna go have cake with their friends, which eventually I did that later in the day, or they're gonna go like hang out and like go party. And I was like, no, I am holding space for an AA meeting in a mental facility. And so it's sweet that I did that, and I wanted to like give back to community even on my birthday. But that's just kind of goes to show like how dedicated to this like culture and this kind of cult that I was essentially in. I'm not speaking for everybody who struggles with substances. I do think there should be a place for people to heal their substance patterns. Do I think that a bunch of addicts, self-proclaimed addicts, should like congregate and meet each other in one room? Probably not, to be honest. Like, I don't really think that was the best way. Why? Because doesn't that just give you like access to more mischievous people that want to do mischievous, chaotic things? Like, doesn't that just give you a kind of more access to like essentially unhealed people that like you can kind of just like run off in the wind with? And like I'm just saying, it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I truly wholeheartedly believe in community. I think that's why I ended up in those rooms, not necessarily because I wanted to repeat to myself that I was powerless, but because I did want to be around other people. And it wasn't even that I needed to be around people that understood the same thing that I was going through. I don't even know how important that was. I just know that being around people, because we're human, is so essential and important for our expansion experience. Like, but I really wish that I could have just offered service in other ways. Like, I wish that, I could have done some things different, but this is probably 100% part of my medicine, helping guide people back to their own sovereign power. Like, I am a woman who repeated for 10 years that I am powerless over something. Mind you, but now I choose not to do that, not because I think I'm an addict. I have healed my trauma on so many levels. Of course, I still have ways to go, but I have done this like really deep, profound work within myself, within my spirit, within my body especially, that has been able to release these traumas that kept me in this lower vibrational version of myself, that kept me stuck in these patterns that go beyond just substances. Like, or not, I don't even know if I'm gonna post this video. I have to see. But is that this woman that I first originally worked with as my mentor, when we first met, she took me to this spiritual shop, right, to go get a tarot reading. And I always remember this shop. It always mesmerized me. I always remembered it, like it was my first tarot reading, hard to forget. And although nothing in that tarot reading happened, thank God, because she was like, you're gonna get pregnant. And I was like, what? Like, I'm 15. But anyways, like, thank God I did get pregnant. It's always interesting that like that seed was planted, because I think around the time I was like 22 is when I first started going to women's circles. Ooh. That gave me the chills, because that is what began truly healing me, is being in the power and essence of other women. And not only was it yoga, my yoga practice, and it's all these little pieces of medicine combined, like creating a lifestyle that's so beyond like what you grew up knowing. and what you were exposed to as you were younger growing up in California. You create a lifestyle so beyond this, right? But really, like, going to these women's circles, that original mentor had taken me to the shop, and then I learned about the women's circles, and then I start working with a shamanic practitioner, and then it's just like the healing portal begins, right? Like the deeper healing begins. Like I know it's because I'm supposed to like empower other people, help guide other people through their sobriety journey or their life expansion journey in a more sovereign way, without all of these, like dark mental programmings woven into your psyche. Like, no, you get to make the choices. You are very active and strong in the life choices that you make, changing that narrative. So I believe that I went through that struggle of those loops in those rooms for 10 years in order to help others grow in their own sovereign way. And so it's maybe it sounds like I'm complaining, but it's not. I'm just sharing my story. I'm sharing the things I saw, the things I experienced, and it's beautiful that it guided me a little bit of a doorway into, the spiritual realm of life in general. And I feel like I shared a lot in this video. Again, if AA is something that works for you, that's amazing. I'm glad that it works for you. I'm just saying the things that I took from it after being in it for almost a decade and having to uncode these certain mentalities that I was taught there. Number one way I healed it is by to not demonize drugs and alcohol. That was genuinely how I started healing my sobriety, or healing my patterns rather, is just by not demonizing substances anymore. And I'm not saying there isn't a dark side to them. I understand that we have like huge epidemics with substances, specifically in America. Actually, the epidemics that exist in America are not happening in other countries. Like very, very rarely are they happening to this extreme, to this level in other countries. 60% of American adults are on prescription pills. That's more than half. So I'm thoroughly aware of like the issues that this country has with substance abuse, and I'm just trying to come at it from like a more empowering perspective, and that's really it. So anyways, if you've listened to this whole thing, you're freaking amazing and you must love my energy or at least or maybe you hate it, I don't know. But anyways, if you like this video and you want to see more of my content, please subscribe. This was such a scratching the surface of my lore and just like the ways that I've learned how to heal myself. And yes, I'm so excited for you to join me on this journey. Mwah.